The kind of abortion that ended Betty's life was actually fairly unusual for an illegal abortion because it was performed by a layperson. This is Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and today is February 6th. So welcome to the Cemetery of Choice, where we talk about women's abortion deaths and how they could be prevented. Of course, I would prefer to prevent the abortion in the first place, but I realize that sometimes, either because it's what she wants or because somebody's pressing her, the woman is going to wind up on the abortion table. So what do we do to stand between her and quackery? So Elizabeth Betty Hellman was the 35-year-old wife of an Air Force major, Carl Hellman Jr. Now, Carl had been stationed in Tokyo for over a year, and evidently Betty found the separation lonely because she got pregnant while her husband was away. On January 28th of 1952, she was admitted to Tinker Air Force Base Hospital in critical condition, suffering from pain and low blood pressure. Her red blood cell count was very low and her white count was very high, indicating an infection. She admitted to having undergone an abortion on January 25th. When investigators questioned her on January 31st, Betty said that a friend had referred her to a woman named Jane. She was shown a photo and identified the woman in it, who was 43-year-old Mrs. Jane McDaniel White, age 43. Betty gave White's address as the place where she'd undergone the abortion. Betty then put her statement in writing and signed off on it. Betty said that White had put her off for several days while she got over her fear of undergoing the abortion. She promised to pay White $100, but only gave her $50. White initiated the abortion by packing Betty's uterus with something and sending her home. Betty became ill, and she called White and asked her to come and check on her. When Mrs. White got to Betty's home, she scraped her out. Now, after Betty gave her statement, the police raided Mrs. White's home. White and her daughter were nowhere to be found. It took 8 days for the cops to track them down, and meantime, Betty had died. So they were arrested both for abortion and for procuring an abortion. So Betty had died on February 6th from peritonitis, leaving her 3 children motherless. Her husband had managed to rush home from Tokyo in time to be with her the last 2 days before she died, and an autopsy verified that an abortion had indeed been performed and that was what had caused Betty's death. At first, White was denied bail, but she was finally released on a $20,000 bond. When questioned, she admitted that Betty had come to her toward the end of January. She said that Betty had called her and asked for Jane. And on a Saturday, Betty went to Jane's house and wanted to talk to her. White said that Betty told her she thought she was pregnant and that she had been vomiting. She also said she had been taking white capsules and shots. Jane said that when Betty asked her to do an abortion, she said, "I told her I strictly was not in that business." She said that Betty's vomiting actually made her think that the young woman was suffering from ptomaine poisoning. Evidently, White had gone through ptomaine poisoning herself. White also admitted to having gotten the phone call from Betty and gone with her daughter over to Betty's house, but she denied scraping her out. She said that she had just come by to bring her a laxative. She said she felt sorry for Betty and told her she should see a doctor immediately. Now, White admitted under examination that she had no medical training. She said that she'd assumed Betty was suffering from ptomaine because she'd had it, and she said she recommended a laxative because "I didn't think a little milk of magnesia would hurt her." Now, the criminal case against White went really well until the defense managed to have Betty's deathbed statement thrown out. It was given again on January 31st, which was 6 days before Betty died. And White's attorney argued that Betty could not at that point have been so certain that she was near death that legally what she said could be counted as a deathbed statement. This had been White's third arrest on abortion charges. She'd been convicted of abortion in 1947 for performing an abortion that her 17-year-old patient survived. White was prosecuted then under the name of Jane McDaniel, and she managed to get that conviction thrown out on a technicality. A new trial was scheduled, but it never took place because the main prosecution witness flew the coop. And White clearly was operating as an abortionist because an operating table fashioned from an old restaurant table and surgical instruments were seized from her house when the police went to raid it after Betty's statement. The police described it as enough instruments and medicine to stock a small hospital. And Mrs. White had been charged in 1951 for an abortion case, but the main witness again vanished, so the case was dismissed. So, fortunately, in this case, Mrs. White seemed to have learned her lesson. I haven't seen any further evidence that she got involved in abortions after that. I'm hoping that Betty's death scared her enough to make her stop.